Just talking Cincinnati Bengals. Unfortunately, Eric All Jr., due to ACL complications, the injury complications, as he recovered after missing most of the 2024 season. Unfortunately, going to be out for all of the 2025 season. That was the unfortunate Bengals news that hit yesterday. But to talk about that and more Bengals news, we have Charlie Goldsmith joining the show. Charlie, we appreciate your time, and we're glad that you're still making your rounds and still covering the teams that we love to talk about and cover ourselves. But we appreciate you giving us some time today.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, that's right off the bat with the Eric All Jr. news that came out yesterday. Obviously, a big deal, a big concern. He showed a lot of promise early on in the season before going down with that unfortunate season-ending injury. From your perspective, the impact that this has on the team, not just for this upcoming season, but big picture and how they plan to prepare building out this roster through the draft and free agency, of course.
Yeah, significant. You can't underestimate the impact that Eric All had on the entire playbook, really. When you look at the schemes that they were running, the concepts they were using in the run game, the versatility that Eric All provided that Zach Taylor hasn't had from any other tight end that he's coached in Cincinnati. All of that is what made All such an exciting piece. And when you look at how the Bengals move forward, they almost have a decision to make. Are they going to really heavily invest in the tight end position, which is what it would take to truly replace or to truly find a guy who can, be as they say, a triple threat tight end, blocking, run blocking, pass blocking, and catching, and all provided some yak ability as well. Eric was probably going to be a second, third round pick if he weren't hurt. He's that type of talent. So to replace Eric, they'd probably need to use a day two pick on a tight end, or need to spend $8 to $10 million in free agency on a tight end. So the question is, do they want to push even more resources into tight end than they ever have before during this regime, or are they just going to have to keep doing what they've been doing and just miss out not having that type of player?
Sorry, Jacob, I thought we were popping over to you. No, you just talked about that, of course, whether they were going to, focus on, spending money in free agency to start utilizing a talented tight end more than they have in the past. The question is, will their approach will be, but what do you think they should do? Should the offense start to implement more, obviously options with the tight end? I mean, we see so many teams throughout football, especially with more expensive quarterbacks. An elite tight end is significantly cheaper than going to get elite playmakers at wide receiver throughout. I think that plays a role in it as well. But should the Bengals make that more of an approach this upcoming offseason and season?
I think you need to have that option. Like what the 2021 Bengals playoff run, for example, showed us was the importance of being able to adjust on a game plan to game plan basis based on the strengths and the weaknesses you have compared to the opponent you're going up against. And previously the Bengals didn't have the Eric All card to play. Sure, I'd like to have a tight end like that, and every team is looking for a tight end like that. But I'd rather keep T Higgins. I'd rather make sure you're really going all in to invest and overhaul the defensive front. You have to fix the offensive guard position. There is so much that I don't know if they'll get there investing in that big of a way in tight end. But certainly Eric All showed the impact that can make on the offense. And if the price is right or the draft lines up in a specific way, I definitely wouldn't have a problem in making a more significant investment in tight end.
We talked about it briefly last segment, but the Bengals took three major swings on kind of question mark players in last year's draft. Amarius Mims, not many starts in college. Jermaine Burton with the character concerns, and obviously Eric All coming off the torn ACL at Iowa. Do you think going 1 for 3 on those big swings could change the way the Bengals operate in this upcoming draft class or even in the future when it comes to safe picks in the draft instead of some of those guys that fell down the board for various reasons?
I think you're going to see them lean into their roots, which is how they built this thing in 2020 and 2021. Here's the thing, too. Like, they didn't really stop their approach. We all know the types of guys they like: college captains, winning programs, guys through free agency who had played leadership roles on their old teams and had a playoff experience as well. The problem was they just missed on a lot of those evaluations. They missed on the Sheldon Rankins evaluation, the Geno Stone evaluation. Jordan Battle, I think he's going to be a starter on next year's Bengals. But what he showed in July and August and September was very concerning this year. That wasn't what you would expect for a captain from Alabama. So it's just that the guys they brought in weren't DJ Reader, Logan Wilson, Jesse Bates, etc. They need to make sure they hit on those evaluations. I do think Jermaine Burton is different from the other two. Like Amarius checked every box except for the playing time. You can live with that. You can work with that. That hit, that process, to me, made a lot of sense. Burton's his own thing. I think you'll see them continue to lean into the character, culture, etc. Burton always was going to be the exception, and then it backfired. So, let's move forward again, re-leaning in and reestablishing the priorities that you used in 2020 and 2021.
You talked about it there. Two misses this last offseason, Sheldon Rankins, Geno Stone. Two other names that have been thrown around for potential cuts this offseason, Jermaine Pratt and Sam Hubbard. How could those defensive cuts be changed by the addition of Al Golden? How will he handle that kind of roster construction of this offseason? And do you think those four are a good four to circle as potential cuts?
Yeah, did you say Hubbard as well? So Hubbard, Rankins, Pratt, Stone. Stone's the interesting one to me. Free safety is such a critical position in Al Golden's defense with what he ran at Notre Dame. And when you look at the range that Xavier Watts had, the impact he made going across the field and making tackles, the playmaking skills, the anticipation, the ability to play center field, he did all that much better than Geno Stone did. So I think one of two things will have to happen with Geno. You'll have to change your scheme to fit Geno's strengths and give him more help with the way you structure your secondary and the umbrella at the top of the defense. Or you're going to have to make a change at free safety. And, I went through all the times that defenses attacked the Bengals down the field, all the times Geno got targeted, and he didn't show that skill set last year. And a concerning fit for how that would translate into a true on-an-island free safety role. Rankins, we all watched the same tape this year. Hubbard, I'm all in on the Bengals bringing Hubbard back as their fifth defensive end. He was the only guy on the whole defensive line who was making plays against the run last year. So if you can get him for $2 to $3 million, I'm very in on that. Jermaine Pratt, I think that Al Golden likes more explosiveness from his linebackers, not necessarily a thumper, but a guy who knew more as a rusher, a guy who trusts more in coverage, a guy who has more range. Pratt really struggled with all those things last season. Kind of an awkward fit with even what last year's Bengals defense was, and I'm really interested to see what happens there.
I think the reason a lot of people are talking about those cuts and getting extensive cap space this offseason is obviously the T Higgins conversation, and that shifted gears in the last couple weeks of the season with how Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, a lot of those guys were talking about T, emphasizing that he is a need. Obviously still very early in this young offseason, but where do things stand with that? Have anything progressed between the two sides? Have they even spoke since the season ended?
Yeah, I don't have an update there. I just keep going back to, I just, a couple weeks ago, I finished my rewatch of every route that Higgins ran in 2024. And all to me it did was reinforce that he's a better player than I even gave him credit for during the season. The story of the season was losing plays at losing time. Aside from Joe Burrow, nobody made more winning plays on the Bengals than T Higgins. His consistency remarkable, his hands remarkable, his yak significantly improved. It's funny too, because all right, if you let T go, there's a very good chance you're using a first or a second round pick on a receiver, and what's that worth? $20 million? Or you can use that $20 million on defensive tackles or you can use that $20 million on T and then use the draft capital equivalent to be the resources you need to upgrade your defensive line. So kind of a thing I'll stress too is kind of look at those draft capital resources and the financial resources interchangeably. You'll need to invest in receiver anyway if you let T go, and T really had a heck of a season.
Charlie Goldsmith hanging out with us here off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Other Bengals news this week too. Al Golden, being introduced to the media, new defensive coordinator moving forward. Obviously they needed to make a change at defensive coordinator. Just talk about the impact of that moving forward for Cincinnati as well. So a move that they had to make and a move that they made, the impact that he could make with this team moving forward.
Yeah, I think you got to start here. What Al Golden's defense is predicated on is, I keep using the word empowerment. Like linebackers get to really be hands-on and making checks at the line of scrimmage and communicating and building the scheme kind of inside out from that spot. And then the free safety is a critical position with kind of those intangibles as well. Intangibles to me are even bigger than the X's and O's, because you saw the Bengals defense last year kind of lose its way, lose its soul from a leadership perspective. They weren't getting what they needed. And on top of that, they might be losing all of their leaders from last year's defense. Pratt's a cap casualty, Hubbard's a cap casualty, or Pratt's a cap casualty candidate, Hubbard's a cap casualty candidate. Mike Hilton, a great leader, he's a free agent. Von Bell was a captain, he's a free agent. What Al has to do is what he did at Notre Dame, and it's find and develop the guys who are going to lead this defense. And that could come through free agency. That could come through propping up homegrown guys like Logan Wilson and Cam Taylor-Britt. But the culture needs to improve on that defense, and the players need to be instilled with more confidence that will allow them to play faster and allow them to kind of find that next stage of their careers. And to me, that's where it starts with Al Golden, the ability to envelop the intangibles of those key pieces.